Founded in 1920, the National Football League has been home to some of the most iconic moments in the history of sports. But over this time, there have been instances so bizarre that one has to see to believe. Throughout this episode, you'll hear about rare statistical outliers, baffling losing streaks, and a cringe-worthy record-breaking season. This is NFL Strange But True, Episode 1. We begin with some Fitz magic. Career journeyman Ryan Fitzpatrick took snaps for a whopping 9 different franchises. Whether he was the team's starter or backup, there were countless moments over a 17-year span where the bearded wonder found a way onto your TV screen.
Whose closet did you borrow that from?
No, it's just game day wear.
At 37 years old, the quarterback signed with Miami to be the team's starter for the 2019 season, the year fans coined the phrase tank for Tua. Nobody told Fitz about the plan, though. He was often relied on to be a one-man show for a talent-deprived offense.
Fitzpatrick dancing around in the pocket. He's running for the end zone and in for the touchdown.
Miami's run game that year was non-existent, dead last in yards and second to last in yards per carry. The leading rusher on the team, who else but the veteran quarterback? Yeah, Fitzpatrick led the 2019 Dolphins in rushing with 243 yards. This graphic is not for the weak of heart. Here's the breakdown of Miami rushers from 2019. Mark Walton, Patrick Laird, Kalen Ballage, and Myles Gaskin shared touches after the Finns dealt Kenyon Drake to Arizona mid-season. Fitzpatrick's arm and legs led Miami to 5 wins, probably an overachievement, as many believed this to be one of the worst rosters ever assembled in the preseason.
Under pressure, Fitzpatrick to the 5, to the end zone. Touchdown, Miami.
Fitz capped off the season with his 4th rushing touchdown on the year, which also was a team high. In the process, Miami upset the Patriots on the road, preventing New England from earning a first-round bye.
Touchdown! Mike Gesicki! Unbelievable!
And to make things all more bizarre, this would be Tom Brady's final regular season game as Patriots quarterback. The NFL is home to some of the greatest all-time rivalries: Bears-Packers, Ravens-Steelers, 49ers-Cowboys, to name a few, but not all clashes are made equal.
He's at the 5, he dives, and it's a touchdown!
And the Eagles are blowing the Jets out.
The Jets and Eagles have played each other 13 total times, with the first matchup coming in 1973, a 24-23 Philly victory. Now, brace yourselves. It would take 50 years for New York to get their revenge. The Birds started the head-to-head series 12-0 before the Jets finally slayed their giant in 2023.
Facing a 4-man rush over the middle. It's intercepted! Picked off by Tony Adams! Adams on the run! First down into the end zone. Breece Hall in for the touchdown, and the Jets take the lead.
Now, believe it or not, some teams have not been as fortunate breaking their losing streaks against out-of-conference foes. Can you believe that over their storied history, the Green Bay Packers have never defeated the Bills in Buffalo? Since 1997, the Pack have won all 4 games against the Bills at Lambeau, but when the matchup has gone east, Buffalo's been perfect, coming out on top all 7 times in series history.
Looking for the quick one, intercepted! London Fletcher Baker will score!
Let's stick with the Bills here, but now on a losing streak. From 1970 to 1979, the Bills dropped each and every game against the Dolphins. Yes, they went 0-20 for the entire decade. That is rough.
Don Nottingham blasted in for his 3rd touchdown of the day, and the Dolphins had once again outlasted the Bills.
Miami's average margin of victory was over 13 points, with the worst loss coming by the way of a 45-7 throttling in 1970. Miami was one of the best teams of the 70s, while the Bills only reached the playoffs once despite having the decade's leading rusher. The disparity in success was evident in their matchups.
52-0 pasting of the Patriots made Don Shula the first NFL coach with 100 victories in only 10 years.
But don't worry, Bills fans, you weren't the only AFC East team that couldn't beat the Finns. From 1970 to 1985, the Patriots were losers of 16 straight road games versus the Dolphins. 12 of those losses came by double digits, including a 52-0 thrashing during Miami's perfect season. When the 1985 AFC Championship was held between the two in Miami, experts and fans alike thought it would be more of the same. New England, though, wasn't having it.
He pumps once and throws. Touchdown! Patriots, Tony Collins, the Patriots have the lead.
And the Patriots are jumping up and down. That means that the Patriots are indeed the champions of the American Football Conference.
The worst one-sided divisional rivalry took place in the NFC North. Detroit had a 24-game losing streak versus the Packers in Green Bay, the longest losing streak of its kind. Green Bay averaged 28 points per game during this span, winning 11 division titles to Detroit's 1.
Bacon, a lot of time for Falk, going deep for Sharp. He's got it.
Henderson, the fullback, throw him a bone. Touchdown.
Good snap, good hold, good kick.
Good night.
But they too put an end to that streak in 2015. Since then, Detroit is 6-4 in Lambeau and currently reside as kings of the North.
To the house, touchdown Detroit Lions!
Moral of the story, no matter how bad a team may own you now, there is eventually a light at the end of the tunnel. Don't worry, Packers fans, we know you'll get that win in Buffalo one day.
Just remember Joe has been a good football player and not really mean.
Certain first names in the NFL are more common than others. One might hear Joe, Tom, Jim, or Aaron, and images of multiple legends would conjure up in your head. How about Napoleon? Since 1924, over 26,000 different people have played in the NFL, and only 3 of them have had the name Napoleon. That doesn't need too much of an explanation, but it gets stranger when you look at who they are. First, we have Napoleon McCallum, a running back for the Raiders, drafted in 1986. He finished second in Offensive Rookie of the Year voting that year. He played 6 seasons for the Silver and Black and never suited up anywhere else.
For the Raiders from their own 42. Napoleon Kaufman gets the corner. Brown with a block. Kaufman down the sideline to the 10 and a touchdown.
Next is Napoleon Kaufman, also a running back for the Raiders, playing 6 seasons there. The shifty playmaker's best campaign came in 1997, rushing for almost 1,300 yards. And lastly, we have a linebacker, Napoleon Harris. Where did he play? Take a wild guess.
A blitz pressure right away. Kick is sacked.
Harris was a first-round pick in 2002, playing 3 seasons in Oakland. So to summarize, 3 out of approximately 26,000 NFL players since 1924 have had the name Napoleon. All 3 were drafted by the Raiders from the span of 1986 to 2002, and all 3 had significant roles on the team.
Johnson come in at the defensive back positions. The throw. John Mobley broke it up. A Super Bowl championship for John Elway and the Denver Broncos.
Sticking in the AFC West, while the Chiefs may catch them soon, Denver still has the division's most Super Bowl appearances with 8. Craig Morton led the Broncos to the big game in 1977. Elway went to 5 from 1986 to 1998, and the Sheriff got Denver to a pair in the early 2010s. What they did in those games, however, is far less impressive.
It's snapped over the head of Peyton Manning. A flag is down and the ball's out of the back of the end zone.
Despite winning 3 rings, Broncos quarterbacks have a habit of struggling mightily in the big game. Combining their 8 appearances with Denver, Morton, Elway, and Manning have thrown just 4 touchdowns to a whopping 15 interceptions. Unfathomable when you have 2 Hall of Famers on that list.
Morton fakes and the rush is on from Randy White, and down goes Morton.
Denver signal callers have been sacked 20 times in those 8 games, and it gets worse. All 5 of the Broncos Super Bowl losses have come by at least 17 points, but let's try to think positive here. Overall, Denver has been pretty fortunate with quarterback play through their history. That same sentiment can't be used for our next team.
3rd and goal. Grossman in the pocket, fires and the ball is caught by Muhammad for the touchdown.
That right there is the only passing touchdown by a Bears quarterback in Super Bowl history. Yeah, despite beating the Patriots 46-10, Jim McMahon didn't throw a single touchdown in Super Bowl 20. Bears quarterback play has left fans in misery since the days of Sid Luckman in the 1940s. Chicago is the only franchise without a 4,000-yard passer in a single season. To make matters worse, they're also the one team to never have a QB throw for 30 touchdowns in a year. Despite the team having some historic seasons, the signal caller has remained a footnote. Take the 1986 Bears, for example, who went 14-2 the year after winning a Super Bowl. Chicago's defense ranked first in points and yards allowed. They started 4 quarterbacks that year, who combined for 12 touchdowns and 24 interceptions.
On 3rd and 7, and the pass is nearly intercepted, and is it picked off? Yes, it is. It is intercepted. Audrey McMillan.
Jim Harbaugh started 15 games for the Bears in 1993, yet barely cracked 2,000 passing yards and threw for a mere 7 touchdowns. Chicago finally made it back to the Super Bowl in 2006 behind an elite defense and special teams, only to have Rex Grossman turn it over 3 times in a 29-17 loss. The Bears have had 2 Pro Bowl quarterbacks in the last 60 years, Jim McMahon and Mitch Trubisky.
Stabler in the end zone, rolling to his right, looking, a flag down as the pass is intercepted at the 15th. Return for a touchdown by Lewis Wright.
The 70s were a dead ball era for wide receivers and the passing game, regardless of what franchise you suited up for. But we're highlighting 1977 specifically, a year so woeful for wide receivers that the NFL would soften its rules on pass coverage.
We played back in the day where we had no rules, so Melvin just knocked the receivers around all over the place. So what do? The competition committee comes together and say, you know what? We can't have DBs like this knock our receivers around because they can't get down the field. So they got the 5-yard chuck rule. So thank you, Mel. Appreciate it.
Among the league's 28 teams, there was not a single player that amassed 1,000 receiving yards in regular season play. In fact, nobody even cracked 900, as Drew Pearson's 870 yards were good enough to pace the NFL. Granted, this was the NFL's final 14-game season, but in an era with Hall of Famers like Swan, Stallworth, Carmichael, and Largent, the production just wasn't there.
Lydell Mitchell topped the 1,000-yard mark for the 3rd straight year.
The receptions leader that season was running back Lydell Mitchell, whose 71 catches were well ahead of the pack. Offenses were built around the run game, with the occasional deep ball mixed in. Nat Moore and Steve Largent were the only 2 wideouts with double-digit receiving touchdowns, and did so on fewer than 60 catches. Largent's 10 touchdowns came on 33 receptions, meaning he caught a touchdown every 3 catches on average. It was clear there had to be adjustments to the game to open up scoring, and the 1978 rule changes did just that, leading to a passing renaissance. Suddenly, the Air Coryell Chargers filled up the stat sheet, the 49ers built a dynasty on the West Coast offense, and some guy named Marino rewrote the record books. We're willing to guarantee there will never be a season without a 1,000-yard receiver ever again.
Bono, they got to get to the 31. And with Shields blocking, Kimball Anders busts it free, and Anders has got the touchdown.
Let's shift our attention from the air to the ground, starting with the 1995 Chiefs. The team went 13-3 and paced the entire league with over 2,200 rushing yards. The twist? Not a single player on the team broke the 1,000-yard threshold. No other team in the top 10 that year was without one. Marcus Allen led the team with 890 yards on the ground, while Kimball Anders and Greg Hill also heavily contributed. Even the immobile Steve Bono got in on the fun, recording 76 glorious yards on this play.
Reversed by Steve Bono, who's running away from the entire field. Nobody saw. This is unbelievable.
Sadly for Chiefs fans, that 13-3 season ended abruptly in their first playoff game. The 2022 Bears are one of 8 teams in history to rush for 3,000 total yards in a season. Quarterback Justin Fields ran for over 1,100, and the duo of David Montgomery and Khalil Herbert each surpassed 700. Let's take a look at every team to break the 3,000-yard barrier and how they finished the season. As you can see, all won at least 9 games, with Chicago being the outlier. Sorry to pile it on, Bears fans. The team ranked dead last in passing yards, went 3-14, and earned the top overall pick in the draft.
And then came the debut of a new running back, former Green Bay Packer Dave Hampton, number 43.
Individually, no runner has a stranger story than Atlanta halfback Dave Hampton. In 1972, the 25-year-old was on the precipice of becoming the first player in team history to rush for 1,000 yards.
That carry, Dave Hampton now has 1,001 yards for the season, and the Falcons finally have a 1,000-yard run.
What came next is enough to make any person cringe. Once Hampton hit 1,000 yards, the game was stopped as he was honored with a trophy at midfield to celebrate the achievement. Just one problem, the game wasn't over. A few moments later, the man of the hour took one final handoff.
Hampton takes the pitch. He drops it. He's picked it up. He's going to be run out of bounds. A loss of 6 yards. He's back under 1,000.
Hampton ended the year with 995 yards, wiping out his milestone. The following season was equally cruel, with Hampton falling just 3 yards short of the 1,000-yard mark. It wouldn't be until 1975 where he finally reached the milestone that he was honored for 3 years earlier.
The Falcon defense. Not only did they give up the fewest points in the NFL, but they also led their conference in interceptions and pass defense, and set a new team record for sacks of the quarterback.
Atlanta drew headlines for the wrong reason again that same decade, as their 1977 team is one of the strangest in history. Nicknamed the Grits Blitz for the constant pressure they put on opposing quarterbacks, the Falcons allowed just 129 points in 14 games. Their 9.2 points per game allowed is a Super Bowl era record that still stands today. So why aren't they talked about with the 85 Bears and 2000 Ravens? Well, maybe it's because they went 7-7 and missed the playoffs. That's right, the best statistical defense in NFL history had an offense so bad they couldn't even get to the postseason.
Week 12 found Steve Bartkowski and the Falcons up against the AFC's toughest defense. And as might be expected when two of the NFL's defensive powers meet, the game was decided by turnovers.
Quarterbacks Scott Hunter and Steve Bartkowski combined for 7 touchdowns to 16 interceptions. On the ground, Atlanta averaged a dreadful 3.2 yards per carry. The offense scored more than 20 points just once all year, and the historic defensive performance is now lost to irrelevancy. The Grits Blitz may be the most interesting team not to make the playoffs, but we wouldn't call them the best. That title would have to go to no other than the 2010 Chargers.
Third down and 12 to the 46. Here's Rivers up top. Caught. Touchdown!
San Diego ranked first in the league in total offense and defense, yet somehow finished just 9-7 and out of postseason play. How does that even happen? Their special teams didn't help, allowing more return touchdowns than any other team in the league.
Off to the races. Great speed. Hunter to beat. Forget it. He's gone.
A combination of flops in the kicking game and late-game turnovers dismantled a prolific season. With a loss to the 4-12 Bengals in Week 16, a team seemingly destined for greatness had to watch the wild card round from home. Since the start of the Super Bowl era, only 4 other teams have accomplished that feat. None had more than 2 losses their entire regular season. Getting a bunch of household names won't guarantee you a spot in the playoffs either. Take Washington's 2000 roster, for example. They put together a defense that would make opposing teams shiver in 1990.
Sacked in the end zone by Bruce Smith.
That's Darrell Green down the sidelines, and it's intercepted. Deion Sanders.
Smith recorded double-digit sacks on the year, but neither Darrell Green or Deion Sanders were even the team's top corner. That distinction would go to their second-year Pro Bowler, young Champ Bailey, who was still making a name for himself at the pro level.
What a play by Bailey.
Amazing defense by Champ Bailey.
In all, Washington had 4 future Hall of Famers on their defensive roster, including 3 Hall of Fame cornerbacks, which has never been replicated. Despite this, the team went a mediocre 8-8, losing 4 of their last 5 and never really contended for a playoff berth.